All right. Well, let's go ahead and see if we can close the door back there, and we'll go ahead and get started. This should be a pretty fun session for you all, hopefully. Depending on the questions that you brought. We have a few wonderful panelists up here. I'm the moderator, so I get the easy job. My name is Cliff Bell. I'm the director for the Innovations Foundry at Genesys, and I'm joined by Dan Stoops, who's in the Innovation Foundry as well, and Alex Smellick and Jim Crispino as well, who are on our AppFoundry and DevFoundry teams. So we have a great opportunity to ask them whatever questions we like. I have not told them what the questions will be, but so that you can get to know each of them a little bit better, I'm going to ask them for a bit about their background and that moment when they realized that they were an innovator in tech. What was sort of that defining moment or story that they have to say, ooh, I just realized I'm in the middle of doing innovation. So, Dan?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. My history is from AT&T Bell Labs. And AT&T became Lucent, Lucent became Alcatel, Lucent became Genesys, and Genesys became this wonderful crowd that I'm sitting with. And way back when speech recognition was the big thing, artificial intelligence, and we were recognizing 0 through 9, yes, no. Very proud of that. It turns out you could not recognize 0 through 9 and yes, no anywhere near the machines that could actually do the recognition because they were big and loud and fans blowing and all that. But when I realized what innovation was to me, when people said, what else can you recognize other than 0, 9, yes, no? Well, we could probably do 10, 12, 15 words. We look at the customer's use case, draw these things out on the board, and we'd come down and say, what are the odds that anyone would actually say this word right here? What are the odds they would say this word? And they go, oh, they say those words like 5% of the time, 3% of the time. Our recognition accuracy was lower than the chance of them saying that word. So in other words, we could just not even listen to them whatsoever and get the accuracy by just saying, of course you said that. And the people who didn't say that, they would just hang up, so it wasn't all that bad. So to me, innovation was getting it right 95% of the time and not suffering the consequences the other 5% of the time. And we got those customers happy. We expanded our vocabulary. We were recognizing 20, 30, 40 words with only 10. Worked really well. Innovation.
Thanks, Dan.
On to you, Jim.
So my name is Jim Crispino. I'm the director of the Developer Foundry at Genesys, which we help our partners and customers with their developer needs to learn how to use the APIs, SDKs, give architectural advice on that. So when did I know that I was innovating? I guess I didn't know I was innovating, but I was. So my first job out of college, I worked for a healthcare IT company. And I worked on the part that did lab transmission of data. So results would come off of lab devices and we would have to transmit them. And that was a pretty stressful job for a kid right out of school. Because if you drop a lab result, it's not like dropping a call. You have somebody's life in your hand to get that data across. So it was a very conservative company. They didn't like to do things that might drop lab results. And we had to transmit, at the time, we were running against bandwidth issues. 9600 baud was not uncommon at that time. That's really low transmission of data. And we had to transmit high volumes of data over a very low baud. And I don't like to be told I can't do something, so I figured out a way to multiplex that over multiple connections, send them across, gather them up at the other side. And yeah, so I was innovating and I didn't even really know the term at the time.
Amazing. Thanks, Jim. Alex?
Thank you. I'm Alex Smellick. I'm with the AppFoundry team, managing the technology partners and AppFoundry program. So I will start with, like many people were doing in the main stage, that I grew up a little bit west from here, about 10,000 kilometers from here. To put it in perspective, the circumference of the globe is 40,000, so it's exactly 1/4 of the world. That's where I grew up. I joined Genesys in '95, and I worked for 11 years at Genesys. Then I switched to the dark side. I went to Cisco. Oh, yes. And then from Cisco, I ended up in interactive intelligence. And one day I wake up and find out I'm back to Genesys. That's a pretty good trip for me. So, and to answer your question, Cliff, where I find out that I was innovating, I just thought it was hard work, but when I left Genesys, somebody called me and said, well, you got a patent, and then you get another patent, and the products which I was involved in building, like URS, some people heard of it, SIP server, so those apparently pretty good products in AI, but that's my story.
Very good. Thank you, guys. At any point, if there's a burning question that you came to this session with, hold up your hand and I will throw the microphone to you. If you catch the microphone, you get to ask the question. And if you don't, well, we'll come pick up the microphone. No, I'm kidding. I will bring you the microphone. One more warm-up question for you guys while the audience prepares their questions is what's your favorite trend in tech today that's related to customer experience? What are some of those things that you look at and say, now that is really an exciting opportunity for the companies in our space to be pursuing? Dan, what do you think?
Well, my work now has moved from speech recognition into more text and messaging. And I'm sure you heard about asynchronous messaging, some stuff I'm working on for about 6 months. I don't like the phrase asynchronous messaging. Asynchronous is not a very common word, not a word that people like, but we do it with our friends and families. And if you are texting about what you want for dinner tonight, that's something you may get an answer hours later. But if you're texting like, can you pick up the kids right now, that's something you want immediately to happen. The idea that our customers can indicate in what they're saying to us the time they expect the turnaround is flipping things. We used to have SLAs based on, well, a fax is this, an email is this, a phone call is this. But now the customer is actually saying informally to each other, this is important or it's not important. It's time critical, it's not time critical. This is really what I see is that the customer is bringing more information with them into the interaction by the nature of being on Facebook or being on Skype or these different messaging channels. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I would have to say the thing I like the most is video, surprisingly. And I didn't used to like video as a channel. I didn't see the point of it. Why do I have to see somebody? But there's a couple of things, and one is just around being engaged. If you're talking to somebody, how many are on conference calls and you're not on video and you're multitasking? You're checking email and, oh, can you repeat that question? I didn't hear that, okay? One thing we do in our group, we're all virtual. So if we do video, you can't easily multitask and you can see when somebody is multitasking and so they're engaged. So I think that video in customer engagement is similar. That you really know you're having a one-to-one conversation, that person on the other end is engaged with you. And along with video, I think co-browse and screen share is important. I'll give you an example. I was on the phone with Apple the other day because my iCloud account, I couldn't get in. I had gotten a new iPhone and my iCloud account was tied to that old iPhone and I needed to switch it over to my new phone number. And I couldn't get it to work, so I had to call Apple. First I chatted, then I called in, and then she co-browsed with me, and we had to exchange screenshots of what we were seeing on the phone. And because we could co-browse, I turned on, photo booth. I had to show her something on my iPhone, so we turned on photo booth, so we had video through co-browse, and I could show her my phone on the camera so she could see the screen of my phone, and she helped me troubleshoot it. So video co-browse, it can be a very value-add channel to your contact centers.
And just to note the difference between the manager who loves video to tell his employees are multitasking and the employee who's not so impressed with video. Yeah, there's two sides of that coin.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's not one particular trend. I think it's more combination of different technologies coming to fruition. And we can see them, that's all the buzzwords which people hear today. It's IoT, it's AI, it's machine learning, all of that coming together. I think how it will play out for the contact center is, I have privilege working with the partners who develop stuff on top of Genesys platform, and I see some of the bits of what future might look like. And what I see is through all these technologies with IoTs, we typically see people talking about Alexa. What does it mean for contact center? It means that many, many people learning to talk to robots. They don't talk to real people anymore. So with the AI, which actually required for IoT to be successful, because it's a huge amount of data being processed, so AI is the necessary component there. So it becomes smarter, the new technology being built, they become more and more efficient, they're not requiring as much horsepower as they used to be. So that will basically make robots to be smarter, quicker. So that's the second trend. And when the third one is also just general computing power becomes cheaper, the clouds become relevant. So what it allows to do, and what we've seen with one of the partners, they actually build the artificial video human being, right, who talks, has emotions, and can understand what you're saying, can understand the intent, can understand the sympathy, or can understand what actually person on the other end feeling through the conversation. So what that makes me to believe that the future of the contact center will be just like self-driving cars. They're starting with, here's the car, and car helping driver to do things, like stay in the lane, don't run into the car in front of you, and all the bells and whistles. So that's stage one. And then it progresses, it's, I think it's called level 3 of autonomous cars, when car does everything but humans still controlling it. And the stage 5 is when car does everything, human does nothing. So I think we slowly going towards that through in the contact center arena as well. So right now, the biggest push and biggest reward which we get is the robots or AIs and all different technologies, assisting agents, provide the right answer at the right time, do the search through the humongous database to find relevant information. But if you look forward, maybe 5 to 10 years, the role will switch. We'll get to level 5, which means that when you call call center, you will be talking to, let's say you call Progressive, you're talking to Flow. And that's the only voice you will ever hear when you call the call center. And it will not be the IVR, because IVRs are pretty dumb devices. They only understand very simple logic and only understand very simple stuff. You put program into it. With artificial intelligence, they will understand your intent better. They will provide the answers. When they cannot provide the answers, then humans will help AIs to get better. So for one of the things I can imagine is that when the robots handling the calls, they sense that they don't have an answer, they bring into conversation human, but when human talks, you still don't hear the human, you hear the robot voice, right? You hear the same voice, it continues on, you don't know that human stepped in and started working on that conversation. You always hear the same thing. And AI will pick up where the gap in the knowledge is, fill it up, next call will be handled by the AI 100%, and that's to me the future. So whatever they showed in the movie Terminator is actually coming to life.
Yeah, I do want to add to that, just because one of the things you're mentioning is the sheer computing power and the bandwidth these things have. So the computing power on the car now, you know, with the LiDAR and all the different sensors is impressive. My thermostat that just came in this week at my house, I haven't unpacked it yet, it's an ecobee, E-C-O-B-E-E. Ecobee thermostat is great at running your HVAC, all that stuff, really impressive. It also has Amazon Alexa built into it. Amazon Alexa, the microphone array, and the speaker built into the thermostat that is sitting on your wall. So in my house now, that microphone is listening to my entire family all the time. Now, what's being sent to Amazon, I'm not quite sure about that, but before, we used to really struggle with how can I do speech recognition on a cell phone with compression. All right, speech recognition on a cell phone with compression in a convertible while going to 65 miles an hour down the road. It's a really, really nasty problem. But here's this reasonably quiet room with a great microphone array that's been testing itself all the time. When you're not listening, you ping, gets all its echoes and everything. So great sound quality pushed across high bandwidth, gigabit up now we have in our homes. So it's not just like, say, the power you have in the contact center, but the pure connection quality and the computing power that can be done. That recognition can be done within, partial recognition within the thermostat itself, partial up in the cloud. If you need help to go to humans, it's just really mind-boggling to me where all that computing power is distributed through that whole interaction. From the very thing you see on the wall to something way back in the office. So much more power than we had before.
All right, thank you. It's time to poll the audience for a second. I would be curious to know how many of you work for a company that you would say has a clear strategy for these devices that are being discussed here. Things like the Echo or Google Home, things that are not mobile and not a browser, but are these proliferating devices. How many of you would say, yes, my company has a clear strategy for that?
Wow.
Okay, so that's good. So you're in the right place. So are there burning questions out there that you have for these guys, because they do have some experience in this area as well? All right, your penalty for not talking is going to be I'm going to continue on. All right, so I'm curious, what do you think is the scariest development in technology that is maybe something that our customers and partners should be paying close attention to that is under the radar right now, or is a trend or a technology or a development that should be paid close attention to but is subtle? So what are those kind of things that you may think that's something that our customers should pay close attention to in the near term?
You want scary or that they should pay attention to?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that always amazed me over the last couple of years in things like home security of your data, this is not talking about enterprises yet, just home security. The idea that in the past, a robber had to physically move from home to home to take things from you. You could only rob so fast as a nefarious person. You could only rob so far. The idea now that with all of our devices being IP addresses out there, and that I could be robbed from somewhere 12,000 kilometers away, not 10, but the idea that there is computing power across the globe that can instantaneously reach into all these devices to try and penetrate them, to then try and route through to get social engineering information or banking information. It's just mind-boggling to me how much computing power and resources is available to try to attack us, how quickly they can do it, and there's no physical slowing down that we used to have where you could only rob so fast. Now they can rob amazingly fast.
And what do you recommend our customers do about that?
Well, yeah. So some of the simple stuff is, some of our partners are saying the intelligence of the process that a bad guy is using is only so high. They might come from the same IP address every time. They might come from the same Annie every time, because they're trying to social engineer. They're trying to spoof, but they don't recognize that we can put in place systems that are saying, I've seen this phone number 10 times in the last second. That can't possibly be a human. I've seen touch tones entered at a pace or at a rate that can't possibly be human. I've seen something come in from 10 different channels to this one account that can't possibly be human. It can't come from one side of the country and another side of the country at the same time. So the symptoms are there when you look at them, but you've got to look back and say, what are the symptoms of fraud beyond, does someone know the answer to my question or not?
Alex or Jim? Either one.
Okay, so I will come to the privacy issue as well, but just from different angle. I think the one concern which will continue to be raised is the safeguards of the consumer information and how you use it. And what I see is that there is different trends. There is legislation trend which try to restrict companies from using the personal data or using data which has not been directly shared with the company. That's one trend. And the other is all the technology companies, especially from the big data domain, who coming in and saying, oh, I can harvest anything for you. So, and the easiest use case, and which you probably all heard from different vendors, is when somebody calls you in your call center, I can pull all of the data about them. And your agent can look at the screen and see who that person had lunch with, where did they go last weekend, what they're doing, what their hobbies, etc., etc. So the technology is there, technology is pushing towards utilizing the data. But on the flip side, that increases the risk for the companies, how you manage that. Whether do you want to jump into that and really embrace that privacy intrusion, or you want to be careful and look at doing it properly and still restrict what you deal with from the customer perspective is based on what they shared with the company. So that's
Very good, thank you.
He stole mine. That was I'll piggyback on that, give you guys a real world example. So we're talking to a partner, a potential partner. We're talking with a potential partner. And we get on the call and he goes, Jim, give me your phone number. Puts my phone number into the screen. And we get to watch the computer chunk away in the background. And then we go on and talk about, while that's chunking away, we're talking about what we can do as a partnership and stuff. After the phone number search kind of gets done, he says, what's your email address? I give it to him, enters that. By the end of that call, he had so much data on me that even I didn't know. Things I checked in on Facebook, like where I'd been. He had calls that I had made, public record data. This is probably a bigger problem in the US because we don't have as much privacy here in the US as we think we do. I think it's a false sense of privacy. They know everything about us and it's for sale. There's a lot of stuff out there available. And like Alex says, if you could use that to your benefit, right? If you anonymize some of that data, you could look at where your clientele are coming from and what their hobbies are, and maybe that will help you render better CX, but you need to be cautious with the data.
Very good. There's two questions.
Tell me what you think about biometrics and where they will go in the future.
Do you want to repeat that question, Alex?
Yeah, so the question is, what do we think about biometrics and where that go in the future? Oh, I'll take the first shot at it. I think it will play, it's already playing significant role in the financial industry where they want to protect from the fraud, and the more and more methods of figuring out who is not the right person or who is trying to portray himself as another person will be very important. And I think it will start coming down from the financial industry to the rest of the companies, because the privacy rules, even though, as Jim said, we probably have false understanding of how they protect it, the government eventually will catch on and start enforcing more and more rules, as well as the people trying to do the social engineering will become more and more sophisticated, trying to get information they shouldn't be seeing.
And I think also a little bit of watching these biometrics become complementary to each other. So we've got some partners who are doing facial recognition, and it's actually a pretty interesting process. You stare into the camera, and those little animations would kind of recognize who you are. The next time you stare into the camera, it says this isn't or not that person. But if you ask the vendor where are your weak points, they'll say in this particular vendor it doesn't work outside in sunlight. Oh, okay. So it's not that the recognition is 95%, it's 95% under the correct conditions. So what happens if you are outside? What do you flip to then? Do you go to voice or do you go to fingerprint? So putting together a series of rules or a governance process to say we have biometrics, we have them complementing each other, and we can have our legal team review it. And that's what I see the hardest thing, is to go in there and say to the legal team, we've got this set of biometrics, but we can only describe it to you with a programmer. And that programmer takes 6 to 9 months to change it. as opposed to saying we've got a rules-based system, here's how they complement each other. And we find that one of these biometrics or anything has been compromised, we can pull it out of the system and recover by using others. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, especially when you look at the cost to do, let's say, facial recognition. I don't mean the dollar cost, but the customer cost, because for a company that has millions of customers, enrolling them all in facial recognition is not going to happen. It couldn't happen fast enough. But you could say that these particular accounts need this, or this particular level of account needs this. And even then you look at it and say, well, if really what we're dealing with is more family care fraud, these are family members that are getting their loved ones or almost loved ones to say the right words or stare in the right place. Again, how do you overcome that? So it's interesting. I think they're going to evolve to each method become stronger and stronger, but if they don't start playing well with each other and say, how can I complement this as a bigger package, then they just kind of end up like one-offs to me.
Sorry, just to add to that, I think also on the biometrics, the bigger role will start playing, from technology perspective, bigger role will be played by the personal devices like smartphones. Because smartphones are getting more and more secure, but they also at some point will become that knows you the best. And it's not as susceptible to the environment situation because it has multiple ways of figuring out whether you the actual owner or not, and whether the biometric the providers can tap into those personal devices and get that second level of verification. That will be, I think, the next step there.
Yeah, and just to pile on one more is, when it comes to biometrics of cell phones, I don't necessarily know where my daughter is. I know where her cell phone is, but I know that she's near the cell phone, right? So that is what's more important.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you were talking about AI in the context of knowledge, and so one of the long-standing trends in contact center and call center environments is KCS, knowledge center support. How do you see AI helping with the idea of knowledge management, curating or even creating knowledge to be consumed by humans or consumers?
I'll start with that. I think companies have made a large investments in FAQs, knowledge center things, right? Those should be the first, easiest point of integration, right? Just let somebody on the web ask the question through a chat and hit your knowledge base, right? Low-hanging fruit. You don't have to invest heavily in an AI engine that you have to train and set up the grammar and everything. Use your knowledge base that you've already got in place. And that maybe can handle 70% of the requests or something and get the answer. Because that's knowledge that you have collected over time, right? You kept it because it was valuable. So it will apply. And for those that it doesn't, you can still use your agents. And then over time, you can invest more heavily in an AI virtual agent that can pull not only from your knowledge center, but from other repositories as well.
And talking to our partners, we see that usually when they talk about AI, it's more targeted towards the consumer rather than the knowledge base. I think it's partially because the assumption is knowledge base is pretty simple to harvest, etc., which more likely not 100% true, especially if you have non-normalized knowledge base. So you have, for example, you start with one company, then you acquire another one. They have their own ways of storing the information. That information needs to be harvested and normalized. That's a perfect job for the AI.
I think that's just in the contact center arena, that not viewed as purely contact center specific activity. It's viewed more as a general knowledge mining, and there are companies who are working on that, and they're not really coming into the contact center market with their solution as much.
So what we see typically, the story will start with AI trying to understand the intent of the question and then go and search the knowledge base. And how they search in knowledge base, it's they viewed either as a solved problem or as a secondary problem. But I mean, there is definitely room for AI to work on that task as well.
And I want to add an operational note. So we've been doing a lot of work with companies like IBM's Watson. So Watson says you get a big corpus of data, and it's going to chew through that in a number of hours. It's going to understand a lot of the questions and answers that your customers might have. The follow-up part to that, though, is how do you actually train the system? It's one thing to point it to thousands of documents, but part of the training is verifying that Watson is correct. Actually asking thousands of questions and having a human who is knowledgeable say, yes, Watson got it right, or no, Watson got it wrong. The process of going through and verifying this whole AI system can be done with your agent pool through something like intelligent workflow design. Is that right? That's one of the acronyms I never get right.
Close.
Yeah. So the idea that the training process for the AI system can be part of the agent's pool of activity. If you have a little bit of downtime, the agent's not doing anything, they can go through and verify the AI process so you're getting stronger and stronger without bringing in people that don't know your business and couldn't really evaluate the quality of your AI system. Just routing those transactions to the agents. And it's not a tough job for them. They're looking at it and they're saying, that was a good answer or that was not a good answer. And they're learning a little bit as well.
Just put a disposition on the worked item.
Yeah.
Say it was good or it wasn't good. You've got reporting built into that, everything about it. Yeah, just use the system
Yeah.
as the way it was designed.
And to me, that's the amazing thing when you mention that, is that the routing systems we have can not just route customer interactions, they can route work items, they can route AI training systems. That's why it's flexible enough to be able to handle that.
I've got three parts. So the first part is on the biometric piece where you mentioned. Today in India, I come from Axis Bank in India. We've got 1 billion people on the biometric who are getting the benefits of the government subsidies. It's also becoming the financial inclusion where you can start opening a bank account just by your biometric. So that's the power of the biometric, and that's what is getting leveraged for the last couple of years now. But two questions which I have is, when you talk about AI, and I come from a bank, so this question is more from a bank's perspective, are we commoditizing the product eventually? Because today, if I have a competitor who's also leveraging the AI, what's the key differentiation between me and him? Because the human element or the touch element is going off eventually. So that's the first part. And the second part is you talked about video the moment I came in. And this is what we've been debating on, so we can leverage video, not from a servicing aspect, but from an acquisition aspect. Where you can open accounts by just showing your documents instead of sending the scans and all that stuff. But the challenge we're grappling with is, a conversation might last for 15-20 minutes. How do you retrieve the recording in case of there's a regulatory requirement? Because the size of the video will be humongous. So today, while we want to leverage video, these are some of the basic questions which are coming in. How do I retrieve it if there's a regulatory requirement and all, or how do I transfer it? Because the size of the video might be humongous. So three parts. One was a statement and two queries which I have.
And let's go with the first one first. So if you can repeat the first one, and we'll go after that.
The AI piece. Are
Right.
you commoditizing eventually? Because the human element is getting lost.
How do you differentiate
Yeah,
your
good.
AI versus a competitor?
Yeah, so let me take your question slightly different, which is a lot of, in banking, a lot of your most profitable customers, the ones that you could really move up your banking chain of value, have become very skilled at being self-service. So it's even worse than that, right? I mean, the AI, how do you differentiate yourselves? And the most valuable customers you have sometimes are opting not to speak to you. So they're becoming more and more, I wouldn't say complacent, but more and more adept at your technology. So being proactive and stepping into that and injecting the agent, not just from a pure profitability standpoint, but I could really help you understand where you could mature as a customer, that can be the difference. And even way back, when I started doing speech recognition for AT&T operators, and the question was, what will happen to all the AT&T operators? We start recognizing digits. Well, they got harder and harder questions. Eventually that doesn't work though, because when's the last time we spoke to an AT&T operator? There were 40,000, I don't know if there are any. So you're right in that you can displace all of that if you're not careful. But I would argue that if you can take your human talent and inject it to mature your customer through your business value chain, there's a lot of buzzwords there, but helping them move up. Because a lot of times you can look at it mathematically and see these inflection points where a customer is about to jump to the next level, They're going to go from moderately wealthy to better, and they're either going to jump with you because you've explained to them that they can grow in your bank, or they're going to leave you because someone else has advertised better that they can grow in the competitor's bank. So watching those inflection points, bringing in your humans to help them become better in the bank, getting better value out of the bank, that's where I would try and differentiate.
And I'll just add to that. I don't think you're going to differentiate yourself based on your AI. If you've got Watson and they've got Watson, you can't really make one better than the other, except maybe the way you train it. And nobody's going to buy that your AI is better than theirs. The differentiation is going to come in your customer experience when they actually get to an agent, and getting your handle times down, and maybe using the AI to help the agent in certain ways. Maybe the AI can be available to the agent at the desktop.
So your base level will be still the AI, but the assisted sales or something will still remain at the end of the day.
Right, and it's not just assisted sale as what the customer's trying to do, but assisted sale in where you want the customer to go. I don't mean in a predatory way, but they would have a better banking experience if they added these products into their account. How can you help them understand how they can mature to be just better at the level they are now?
I would take it a step further, as always. So even let's say the conversations handled 100% by AI, your question, how you differentiate, the answer really is how you differentiate today. You differentiate today because your agents can solve customer problem quicker, more efficiently. So what that means in reality is that your internal processes enable them to do it. So that's what will be in the AI world as well. If you enable AI to solve the problem at the first, do the first call resolution for them, that will differentiate you from the bank next door who just did not put those policies and enablement rules in place. So it's all about integration on the back end and how you empower your frontline humans or AIs with the tools necessary to solve customer problems. Because to me, it's really not that question. If I switch to AI, then every agent in every company will be the same. Well, I guess they all will say hello the same way, but that's where it will stop. From that point on, it's only reflecting your internal process.
All right, we are getting close to the allotted time. Do we have time for one more quick question, if there's one more out there that people would like to ask? Yeah.
Quick one.
Yeah.
With what you said about privacy in mind, one of you mentioned the video chat being a great sales tool and a great interaction point. Have you seen that there are certain demographics that are more or less adverse to using that technology for different products?
I don't know about demographics. It's almost, I mean,
So what my step
yes, the millennials are going to take it up faster than us old folks. It's just the way of the world. Unless there's a great use case. If you could use video to chat with a Home Depot or a Lowe's agent to show them what's broke in your house, right? And they could help you resolve and say, oh yeah, we have that product and it's on aisle 9. We can ship it to you or you can come in and get it. But using video as a tool, if it were something that was accessible and valuable, people would use it. I don't think people are going to use it just because it's cool. I don't know. The younger generation would. I do know that video is more popular in certain cultures than it is. I think in Japan, video is pretty popular, and I think certain parts of Europe, I think video is pretty popular. So,
Even video calling
calling,
for a decade
yes,
in Asia. Yeah.
And I would say it's more about how compelling the case of using video. If it will help me to go through the particular interaction quicker, like what you mentioned, showing your documents versus spelling all your documents or faxing them, etc., then the person will opt in to go with the video. If it's just in general, if I need to contact the contact center and they require me to be on the video, well, I'm not sure about that use case. If it helps consumer, then they will opt for it. If not, then dropout will be pretty high.
Okay. Good questions. Thank you for your participation, and thanks Alex and Jim and Dan. It was very good. Very much appreciated. Have a great rest of CX17.